Welcome everyone to Centering Justice. My name is Hamida Bagarathi, pronouns she, her, hers. And I'm so glad that we're gathered to here to spend some time to really think through what it might mean, take an exploration of building our councils. Um, so as we move into this space, knowing that we might be coming from many places and spaces, meetings, taking care of others, writing, grocery shopping. Let's all take a deep collective breath at our own pace as we enter into this space. And then release it as you are comfortable. So as I shared, my name is Hamida and I support leading out our learning communities at NEW. And I join you today from Ypsilanti on the unceded and occupied lands of the Anishinaabe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, who create the three council fires of Michigan, the Sauk and the Fox and the Wyandotte, and land in which contemporary Indigenous and Native peoples continue to live and thrive and collect and contribute to our collective uplift and their collective uplift. Throughout the decades and hundreds of years, our Indigenous and Native American communities have counseled, loved, forgiven, redeemed, and repaired with each other in trusted and beloved community. The last time we got together, we talked about the ancient art of repair. And when we think of that, what comes to mind is our circles of trusted and beloved folks and how essential having those circles and communities are to growing and living and just creating community with each other. And so today we'll be talking about that, how we build our trusted councils. A little bit about centering justice. We invite visionaries, storytellers, doers, and healers that are interrupting the status quo and are helping and will help us to be inspired to believe in and act to create a more unjust and thriving society. So during our time together, you'll be hearing from myself, Yodit Messman Johnson, and Carly Frederick as sort of your gentle co-facilitators today. And we'll be in conversation with our speakers. So we'll have a conversation dialogue with our speakers, and then we'll be closing our time together with invitations or requests for what we could do from our speakers. So today we are joined by Elizabeth Whittaker-Walker, Kija Gray, and Rod Wallace. And I'll share the virtual mic with Yodit now to offer a little bit of grounding.
Hey, thank you, Hamida. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Okay, first of all, it's 30 degrees in Michigan. Can we just start there? And I feel a type of way about that. So I got on my glossy lipstick, and I got all my favorite friends, and we're gonna pretend it's warm and balmy and 65 and not 35. I'm also at the New Center in Ann Arbor in my office where I'm finally easing back to, y'all. And so it feels good. And Remy, who you all sometimes see on Centering Justice, my 10-year-old Shih Tzu, is here in the office too, because he was like, look, girl, you're not leaving this house without me. I'm coming into this space with just kind of some giddiness because 3 of my favorite people are here. And I don't want to be fake. I know I kind of say this every month, but that's one of the that's one of the cool parts about Centering Justice. And I posted on Facebook, I hope your work gives you tingles, because my work mostly gives me tingles. And Centering Justice is certainly a source of that tingle. So we are talking about wise counsels, and sometimes I have my little diatribe I open with, but I'll tell you how I'm coming into this. Last month, we talked about ancient repair. And I had shared about having recently learned about a harm I had enacted some years ago that the people for whom I hurt had the courage to finally come and tell me, y'all. And they shared it with me, and we committed to a restorative process together, and we're working through that. But one of the things that I had to do as I was learning how my intent landed, impacted them way different than I had anticipated it, was I had to assemble some folks around me for accountability. I had to invite some folks into the shame, into the fear, into the exposure that happens when we're called on the carpet. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with my therapist a few years ago. I was suffering with something, a particular issue. And she said, baby, who is your wise counsel? Who is your council of elders? And I was glad at that time to I kind of had a list, y'all, because it turns out this is how I roll. I roll with a tribe. I don't know if that's the only child in me or if that is me making extended family, or I think it's mostly that my orientation is towards community. And so as I was thinking about those tribes, there's the tribes that are comprised with parents who are raising children together, right? There's a group of folks that I've connected to since I had a kid. There's my ride or dies and my woes who they've known me since the first grade, right? They know me when I had buck teeth and, ponytails, down my, and I go to them often to be reminded of, where I'm from, 7 Mile all day long in Ethiopia. There are my mentor types, the folks I go to for subject matter expertise. And those names you heard today, Elizabeth, Rod, and Kija, these are folks who I count among my wise counsel. It was Elizabeth that I went to when I had just a vision and what was it, 3 or 4 pages, Elizabeth, of an outline for centering justice. Nah, Bomani, that's the west side, which is the best side. When centering justice was just a twinkle in my eye, it was Elizabeth who has a depth of experience in program and curriculum development, who I came with my little baby and said, help me grow my baby up. And Hamida and Carly just wrapped up, along with the facilitation team, the 3rd cohort of Champions for Change. And when I was trying to figure out how not to parent out of my fear and how to raise a liberated Black child, it was at a screening of Beyonce's Lemonade that I sat next to, who would become a source of wisdom and guidance for me, Kija Gray, on how to raise children who can be free in spite of all the things happening in the world. And then much more, I've been hearing about this brother, Rod, who is I don't know, amazing, an academic, an artist, a mentor, and an advocate for young folks, particularly in his role at Bright Futures. And I got a chance to see Rod in his zone of genius among some young folk. And so when Hamida, Carly, Will, and I were planning today and thinking about who are the folks we know are sort of exemplify wise counsel, Rod came to mind. So I'm delighted. Rod, Elizabeth, Kija, please meet all of our friends, all 30 of them, and more will probably come that make up the community that is centering justice. We're gonna sit back, have some fun, y'all, and dive into this topic of building our councils. Carly, you wanna help bring the people into space?
Yeah, thanks, Yodi. It was so great to see each and every one of the speakers' faces light up with smiles when you shared about them. So we always invite our speakers to bring their whole selves into this space. And so we'll begin by asking each of them to just share what communities and identities they're drawing upon as they enter today's conversation. And I wonder, Elizabeth, if you could go first, maybe then Kija and then Rod.
Sure. Hey everyone, peace. Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. I remember what day it was today. um, I belong to many communities, and I'm grateful for the village that I'm a part of. I come from communities of truth speakers. I come from a community of strong women. I come from deep New Orleanian and Carolinian roots via a few places, with influences from Haiti that made its way, down to Louisiana, with influences from Mali, with influences from, the Yoruba in Nigeria. I come from educators. I come from mothers. I come from people who believe in the power of healing and you know 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 the power that healing can have on us as individuals and us as communities when we decide to invest in it. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Good afternoon. My name is Kija Gray, and my pronouns are she, her, and mom. And I come to this work through just a commitment to, like Yodit said, raising free Black children. But my identity is that of Canadian through St. Vincent and the Grenadines, first generation Canadian. And I spent a lot of my formative years in the West Indies where I learned what it was like to live in a village in real time, and what it meant like to not just have your parent, but have everybody parenting you, and how affirming and validating that is to my life today. It's how I show up in the world. It's how I feel about community. And I know that none of us, it's not possible for us to be here without those that surround us. So just because of where I sit in my age, I have the unique position to be able to look backwards and see the ancestors that brought me here, but also to be blessed to have children that I can see the future clearly. And so I'm grateful for all of that, and also for my partner who is in the room already starting mess. So Bomani is my partner and he's here. Thank you so much.
Wait a minute, and y'all got a baby that's doing something pretty remarkable. Do you want to take a moment to share that so the village can celebrate you and them?
This is day 3 of my daughter, Zuena Gray. She is going to be the first documented. She's very not comfortable with that. She says because her ancestors have walked this path before, but she is going to be the first documented Black person to hike the Bruce Trail, which is Canada's longest marked trail, 559 miles, 900 kilometers, as a through hike in the next 6 weeks. So she's out there, and this is day 3, and I dropped her off at Niagara Falls, which is the southernmost tip of this trail, and I watched her walk into the woods. And as a parent, I can't tell you, as much as I know that she wouldn't do anything different, I'm proud and excited and nervous and all of the feels. So thank goodness for cell phones, because I hear from her every evening, but it's a trek. So she's out there right now as we're doing this. So please hold space for her safety, hold space for her, for all of it. Thank you.
Come on, Rod, tell the people who you are.
Where do I start? I am Rod Wallace, Roderick Wallace, Roderick L. Wallace, all kinds of things, but mostly Rod Wallace. Um, I entered this space as an African American man who was born in a post industrial society. Um, I was born in Flint, Michigan, um, and from parents who participated in the Great Migration. So I have very distinct Southern roots, Southern Baptist roots to be sure. Um, I am also a Black male educator, not only an educator of black males and everyone else, but um, hold the distinction of being a teacher and an administrator that is a distinct minority in the educational system of America. That experience led me to further research the experiences of others, especially through the lens of hip hop and through the lens of activist ed leadership. I have seen urban educational models work. I have seen urban educational models not work. And so I am, I guess, what you would call an academic, an educational researcher. I have a distinct interest right now working on my PhD in Black male educators who also create music and participate in hip hop culture and determining what can be learned from participating in hip hop and recognizing ideas within hip hop that can be of benefit to children in urban centers. So how that performance impacts the music they make as well as how the music impacts their education. That is not a position that I held as a school administrator. I hesitated to talk about what I believed about hip hop because sometimes those environments can tend to be extremely conservative. And hip hop does not always hold a very positive place with people who don't see it beyond what is commercialized and what is pumped up by the media. So, again, I do enter from that space as well. I do consider myself a musical artisan. I have been privileged to be the co founder of the Amplify Fellowship here in Washtenaw County that provides independent Black artists with recording and production support in exchange for community service. Hence, that is why I am here today at WISE, where we have a couple of our fellows who are going to actually do a demonstration with some third graders today and teach them how to use some equipment and also talk to them about the impact of music in their community. I consider myself a writer today. Actually, yesterday, I just found out that my first chapter for a public health journal is going to be published. I'm extremely happy and proud of that, as well as my family. Um, and I am a father and I am a husband and distinctly interested in the fact that communities are built from families first. So I'm also an active member within my community on the civic side as well. Although I do not claim Ypsilanti as my home, Ypsilanti feels like home. But back in Oakland County where I live, I'm engaged in some commission work for children, families, and youth, as well as some arts initiatives, just because I want the world to look the way I want it to look. And the only way for me to do it is to move my feet. So I am extremely busy. I am all over the place, but I can honestly say that I am very, very fulfilled. So I'm thankful to be in this place and with these brilliant people with me.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, Kija, and Rod, for sharing how you're entering into this space. Also, congratulations to Selena and congratulations to you, Rod, getting published. Big deal. One thing I wanted to know, my spark of inspiration for us coming to talk about building our councils, I need to shout out Elizabeth. She led an incredible session for one of our programs, Champions for Change. And she really talked about the importance of what it means to have trusted and beloved community members you can think with and make mistakes with and learn how to repair mistakes with. And that was just so important and so impactful. So thank you, Elizabeth, for that work and sparking and seeding this idea for our session today. So in moving back a little bit, so in the past few months in Centering Justice, we talked about what it takes to transform communities towards racial collaboration. And we talked about just love and all of the simplicities and complexities with just love. We talked about the ancient art of repair at our last time together, and really what it means to lean into accepting responsibility and thinking about communal responsibility and working together to repair harms and heal collectively to hold community. And so one question that came up with us is with whom? And so this is where building our councils came up. So I will share the prompt that probably engaged all of you to join us today, and then I'll start off with our question. So healing, especially racial healing, is both an individual and community journey. Too often, when we're hurt or have hurt others, we hold these complexities alone and suffer in silence. Yet, that approach limits our healing and keeps us from realizing equity and justice. Some of the best learning and healing happens with care and accountability from others. We need trusted people to check in with us as our counsel. So, how do we cultivate our counsels? From and with whom can we learn the practice of community care? And with that, I'll start off with our question. And perhaps to switch it up, we can go with Rod, Kija, and then Elizabeth. Um, what does wise counsel mean to you? And what has that meant in your lives?
So counsel and counsel, um, I think the people around you who support you and who you go to for ideas versus those individuals that pour that positivity into you. And it should be one and the same. Um, One of the things that I've already heard today from Yodi is how we have to have people with multiple perspectives around us to be able to intercede in provide feedback and be able to offer different approaches and different perspectives. So I have I've been blessed to have individuals around me from across the spectrum of activity, across the spectrum of 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 political stances, of levels of conservative, levels of just basically what grounds them in their thinking. So I have friends that are extremely spiritual. I have friends that are not. I have friends that are across the spectrum of religions. I have friends that are across the spectrum of economic activity. So I definitely have. What's been interesting for me is that I had to go out and I had to seek those individuals beyond those relationships that kind of come to us, via our neighborhoods and via work and via those people who you tend to collect along the way. So one thing that's been great for me is that um, being an extrovert definitely has its privileges. And I'll just give an example. When I began this journey to get my doctorate, and I was reading research about hip hop, which is still relatively, obviously, a new perception when it comes to education. And I'm reading names, and I'm extracting these quotes and extracting these ideas or whatever. I'm looking at names, and I'm looking at where people are. Oh, this person is up at Oakland University. Oh, this person is at MSU. So through the beauty of social media, I'm making connections with them, and now they are a part of my council. Now they are not only a part of my. Some of them are not only a part of my committee, but they are offering me opportunities and ideas. And as I go through this journey, not only just as I seek out my doctorate, but as I transfer after I'm done with it, I know that it will yield me opportunities. As I've taken losses recently, I've been able to rely on the counsel of my brothers too. Now, they don't have anything to do with a doctorate or a PhD, but these are people who have assisted me in staying grounded about what it's like to take a loss. I told the group as we spoke last week about when I lost my father. I felt like there was a looseness that occurred in my life where you don't have, even as a 40 something year old man, there was still an authority that I regarded with a certain level of respect and a certain level of care that I no longer had. That would be that final word. So what does it look like to be that final word and to serve in that role for other people? And I had to seek that information out from my counsel. So, um, not only in terms of determining who you're listening to, but what you're listening to and applying is extremely important. Um, so for me, that's essentially wise counsel, um, and you just have to be very reticent of who's saying what and what you're willing to apply. and what credibility people have as well as lead as people in your life. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Thank you. I know being sandwiched after Rod, I'm gonna be saying the same things. When you work in community, some of it seems really complex, but it's really simple. And so you hear so many common threads, right? For me, it's about trust, vulnerability, and intimacy. Relationships. And I tell my kids, there's only two things: relationship and gratitude. So I'm always thinking about the intentionality in the relationships when I build wise counsel. My mother, to me, was a master at that. And I didn't realize it till she had transitioned, that she had really put some really good people in my life. So adults, when I was a child, she trusted, and she sent me and my sister back to the Caribbean to live with people that we didn't know. We, as individuals didn't know, but they knew who we were. So I remember always, when you're in the West Indies, it's not about who you are, it's about who you belong to. So they would say, oh, that's Sandra's daughter, that's Florence's granddaughter. They know you by who you belong to. And so that had always stuck with me. And it seemed really intuitive for me, I think, when I was raising my own children, that they didn't really belong to me, right? They belonged to all these people with whom I sought counsel with. So even, for instance, when people say to me, are you not proud of what your daughter's doing? There's something in me that pushes back at that, where I say, she's not really mine. She belongs to this village. She belongs to you. She is yours. We do the work to bring our children here. We do the work to be here, but really, individualism is really the death knell for me of community. You can't have individualism and have community existing in this space, right? And so when I saw
Come on, say it one more time. Just say it one more time for the folks in the bleachers. You can't what?
You can't have a concept of community and individualism coexisting at the same time. So you're either living in community or you're living as an individual. Those two things are, they don't coexist, right? And so when I show it up in my relationship, that's how we show up in community. I was saying to my my sister yesterday, I think she's somewhere on here. I always feel somehow like she's my virtual slapper, right? I always feel like, wow, everywhere we go, we have great community, right? Everywhere we show up, the neighborhood seems to be great and the people on the block are great. But really, a lot of that work is, number one, people wanting to have that same value, to live in community and spaces where they bring that mentality, where they bring a sense of community. So when we build that, our children have safe spaces to be. I feel like my kids, if I were to leave tomorrow, that they have a community of people, I would feel comfortable knowing that they have these relationships, that we've planted the seeds for them to be good. My mother did that for me. My mother did that for me. And so it is a tradition that comes from our ancestors, where we understand that we really live in villages where we seek counsel from one another. And there are times where we will need to be honest and vulnerable and trusting and all those things. And so that's, for me, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but wise counsel seems to exist everywhere I am. And I try to wear it with me. I try to always wear it in everything that I do. So in everything I do, there's community. Community is at the heart of it.
Yeah, as I have been listening, a few things come to mind when I think about wise counsel. The one thing that I did want to lift up is the role that we play ourselves in wise counsel. because part of being able to hear here among, our trusted community and our trusted circle involves preparing ourselves to be able to receive what our trusted circle has for us. We can be surrounded by the wisest people all around, but if our spirit isn't ready to receive, to take in, to connect in those ways. And so I think that, we ourselves are included in that. And building off of what Sister Kija just shared with us, there's also an extension of us. And there's counsel that we have access to. We have access to generations and generations and generations of counsel. And so when we think about creating space, not only space within ourselves to hear and to receive and to be part of counsel, connecting with those who came before us, connecting with our ancestors, opening ourselves up to receive the lessons of the folks that we share blood with, who came long before. Genetic memory is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing. We literally carry the DNA of folks who walk this earth, hundreds and hundreds and thousands in some cases, years before we got here. And so their hopes, their struggles, their prayers for us are with us. They're activated through our presence here. And so when I think about wise counsel, I think about all the things that have been said as well, but I also think about the things that we can tap into beyond. I know some people keep altars for their ancestors. And that can happen in lots of different ways, right? But when we say the names of our ancestors, literally speak them out loud, they're here in our presence. And so long as we continue to speak their names, we're inviting our ancestors to be right here. We're acknowledging the blood that flows through us, the wisdom that's been, encoded in us, the collective ancestral memory that we carry with us. And so, one practice that I think is particularly powerful whenever formally beginning, counsel or conversations that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, is, to invite our ancestors to join us, to name them. And so with that, I want to invite, I want to invite my ancestors to be with us today. And I acknowledge the space that all the lineages who are, connected with us on this line, they're here with us, and not in some spooky, some spooky way, but we are an embodiment of them, their prayers, their dreams, their hopes. And the more that we acknowledge that, the more we have access to the goodness and the insights and the wisdom that they've left with us.
Absolutely beautiful. So many things that y'all surfaced. For me, Kija, you often remind me of my mother. Both of our mothers have transitioned, but when you said that she she created Village, she was thinking about you. It may, and when she transitioned, there were people in place to stand in those gaps, right? To fill in those tender spaces, to be a soft landing space for us, right? And it took me, I was so overcome by grief that it took me a while to look up and to recognize that those folks were there. It also took me a while to be able to invite them in, right, to that space. So I just wanted to acknowledge, as Rod is sharing about the transition of his father and you of your mother, and the kind of trust. Right at the end, Rod, you touched on what are the values and attributes of the people that are in our council, right? And how can we be discerning? And I thought that was such an important piece that I think we're, our kind of next prompt for that I'd love to hear is that, what is that kind of I don't know, vetting you do, but so to speak, right? How do you, aside from, I rely on good old fashioned intuition, right? But Elizabeth, maybe can you talk more about how are we thinking about who we invite into those tender places, but also into like, hey, I'm moving into a new part of my career, or in the context of this conversation, we have lots of white folks on this call who are trying to do their work of dismantling racism, who understand that they cannot put that labor on Black bodied folk, right? We have lots of multicultural and Black folk who are trying to figure out what solidarity looks like and wrestling within that, right? So when you have a particularly thorny or big topic too, like how do we work in collaboration? Again, I would just invite your thoughts on that as you help us think about how we can discern who's in our councils, please.
Sure. Yudit, while you were speaking, a song started playing in my head. And the name of the song that started playing was Iwa Pele by Navasha Davis. Iwa Pele is a Yoruba concept that means good character. And when I think about wise counsel and I think about who's equipped to give that, the first thing I think about is good character, like folks who live well on purpose, who center their actions in love. I think about, folks who are invested in seeing me become who I was sent here to become, right? And those, like as Rod mentioned, like that might be like across, political persuasions. It might be across, different dimensions of identity and all that good stuff. But I think about folks who are invested in helping me become who I was sent here to become. I also think about I think about folks who know how to get a prayer through. For me, I think that's been incredibly valuable in all forms of, counsel and challenges that someone might help you navigate. Because, there are some challenges that we witness in life that you can have. I'm a strategist. You can have all the technique, all the strategy, this, that, and the other. Sometimes you need some things spiritually to be unlocked for you to have the breakthrough that you need to go forward. When we talk about healing or racial healing, like there's some spiritual components to that. When I think about even in Ethiopia, for instance, when I think about the Battle of Adwa, or even when I think about the Haitian Revolution, right? We're talking about actual wars that were fought and were won because the people came together and they fasted and they prayed. And whatever, people's like spiritual connection is or isn't, right? Having people in my council who understand the value and the importance of spirit and understand the relationship between spirit and history, understand the relationship between, strategy and spirit, and how there are some things that can be unlocked in the spiritual realm that, if those walls are knocked down on your behalf, there's no saying, what can be broken through. And I know in a lot of professional settings, like we don't talk about like the power of spirit, this, that, and the other. It's something that it's misunderstood, this, that, and the other. However, when we talk about who we are as people, when I think about myself as a woman of African descent, a Black woman, you don't make any big decisions before you consult spirit. And so when I think about my wise counsel, I think about people who understand the importance of that, who don't shy away from that. And again, we all have the different relationships to that thing. But I have found that when I am, have that combination of like good character, knows how to get in touch with spirit, and then understand strategy, there's nothing that you can't do when you put a group of people like that together in a room.
Kija, how about you? Discernment, how are you thinking about who you bring close in your wise counsel? And then Rod, you can jump in there after that.
So I'm very Pollyannish about this life. Like I'm Miss Universe. All things happen for a reason. But because of that, I have my mother used to call my husband my Rottweiler. I have to have people who I'm the balloon and they are holding the string.
Mm.
Like, because I will be like, oh, I'm kind of like trust everybody, but there are people, including my sister who's a lot more logical in her thinking. I tend to be really sort of trust everybody, but I have people who are close enough to me who will say, hey, you know, and pull the string a little bit and keep my balloon from just floating off into air, right?
Hello, fellow balloons.
So I'm the orange butterfly, but I know that one of the things I think that we shouldn't ever lose sight of is our intuition. You see it. Our babies know it when they're here. Like, have you ever had your baby and you try to hand them to somebody and they're clinging to you? They're like, no, no, no. And you're like, oh, just go. They know. And so one of the things that gets worn away the older we get is the sense of intuition. We feel it, we know it, but we don't trust it all the time. So it's that feeling you get when you're about to get on an elevator, there's a strange person in there, and sometimes you get on, but sometimes you just have that thing and you say, oh, it's not polite to not get on, I should just get on. No, trust your intuition. Your intuition, they're those spiritual guides that tell you, and the more we are, to me, still, the more we're quiet, the more we make sure we got people to hold our balloon strings for us, the more we stay in touch with that. It's important. I think about vetting wise counsel, and this just came to me recently. I was thinking about when I was considering the possibility of marrying Bomani. And I mean, I thought he was fine. I was like, hey, he cute, but that's not enough to build a relationship, right? And I was in Ottawa, Canada at that time, and my mother and a group of her friends were there at this event, and they were all staying in what seemed at a bed and breakfast, and they were all upstairs in this bedroom. And I remember going up there to this group of women and sitting on the bed and saying to them, I think he's the one. I think he's the one. What do you think? Like, what is your thought? And I remember them sort of, cute dude does not pay. Okay, whatever. I remember them talking to me, asking me some serious questions like, is it attraction? Why do you think it's love? Why do you think he'll be the one? I remember them then, without further notice, just all laying hands on me and praying for me and praying that I make the right decision. They didn't make the decision for me, but 25 years later, that upper room conversation is really, that was the wise counsel in that situation. And it mattered. And a lot of those women are no longer here in the physical, but I never forget the moment that time that they took to mentor me and to sit with me and to listen to everything I had to say. So for me, that's vetting it. And I feel that I do the same for my kids. Like, hey, these are the people that you can go to for wise counsel. And I work hard to vet them based on, just my love. I know that when Zuena met Auntie Yodit, she was like, that's my auntie. And they have a relationship. Here's what I know for sure. If Zuena got into something and she felt like she couldn't come to me, she could go to her. And I trust that Yodit wouldn't have to call me up and tell me that conversation. They have an independent relationship and it's vetted and it's good. And I trust that wise counsel is going to come from the people that surround her. So grateful for that. And I think, again, that's how I think about it. I'm very, very, it's important to me though, to have those close people who keep me, give me those parameters. They have the strategic thinking, that I don't necessarily embody, but they're close enough to me and they love me enough. And I listen to them. They hurt my feelings a lot. When I tell you my feelings begin to hurt, and I come up here and I cry sometimes, but I know they love me. So I trust that. I trust that from my wise counsel.
I think for me, it's a couple of things. First of all, I like to look at the method and manner by which people are present, even if it's during conversation. Our lives are about people. Our lives have to be about each other. But I think that there are many situations where we get pulled into so many different directions that it's difficult when somebody even comes to you for counsel to make sure that you're centered in on your listening, you're centered in on being able to, um, provide the information that is needed and necessary for a person to make a decision. And because if you are the person needing that wise counsel, you need the totality of that person to be in that place. And I think in many situations, in vetting someone, you determine whether or not a person has that capacity to be present. I think about, for my wise counsel, again, as I said earlier, it changes, it's situational for me. There are individuals who I only talk to when I'm making a career change. And that individual has been present. His name is, and I'll say his name here, his name is Lawrence Hood. Lawrence Hood grew up with me. Lawrence Hood was there when he was there when I was in the youth group in high school. Lawrence Hood, I'm gonna give him his flowers. Lawrence Hood was there when I stepped foot on Eastern as a freshman in campus. I mean on campus. Had no idea he was there. Lawrence Hood was there as the assistant principal at the first school that I worked at. When it came time for me to get ready to walk away, I called Lawrence Hood. When it came time for me to make a move from that, I called Lawrence Hood. So the reason that I know that I can speak with him about those kind of moves is because he's going to put me in the frame of mind of seeing the chess move that is afterwards. And so there are people who come into your life and serve as what I call mile markers. There are individuals who I go to when I need spiritual support. There are individuals who I go to when I just want to rant. And one thing that I put in my notes was that another thing that I look for is people who know the difference between confirming versus affirming. To confirm something, like when somebody is being confirmed for Supreme Court, it's more of a like a final ratification that this person is the right person for this role. Whereas affirming someone indicates that it's almost a giving of confidence that you can make the decision. You can make the decision on your own if you seek out the right information. So there are some times where I needed a decision that I had already made in my mind to be confirmed by talking to somebody. And sometimes that's a good thing, but also to be affirmed in a direction that says, I'm not going to answer this question for you, but you need to trust yourself. And I think a lot of times what wise counsels do is they sit you down and say, hold up, you need to trust yourself. And because no matter if you're right or you're wrong, you're going to be able to deal with whatever comes of it, period, point blank. So that is my vetting process. I encounter a large amount of people that are involved in music, for example. And there are individuals who I work with, and there are some individuals who I do business with. There are some, people who I keep and maintain as contacts within certain contexts. But then there are some people who I can go to and say, hey, this is a problem. And it's led by their ability to be present in those conversations, whether I can see some longevity in our relationship and some mutual support that I can maybe provide to them, as well as whether or not they're going to be able to, deal with whether I win or I learn. Because I don't believe in winning or losing. I believe in winning or learning. And there are some individuals that will say, hey, don't do that. That's the wrong way to go. But then there are other people who say, hey, give it a shot, see how it works, this, that, and the third. You can do it. So that's the method by which I vet people. And then also, we have this thing in our community about good people. We know when people are good people. And we know that some people nosy and some people might talk too much. And there are some people who might have personality flaws and things of that nature. And as we've grown, we know how to kind of keep people in that slot. But we know when people are good people and when they have your best interests at heart. We do. That intuition is no joke. And I believe it and I trust it and I think it comes directly from God. So we know when somebody is valuable within our trust to be able to support what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to open it up for conversation, y'all, on this topic. Elizabeth, it seemed like you came off mute.
I was smiling inside and outside, listening to Rod and Kija. One of the thoughts I have, and at first I got to give a shout out to my husband, Leland, who's here. He's part of my Wise Council. One of the reasons I knew that he was good people is because I learned that the folks that he was going to for Wise Counsel were good people. I'm gonna say that again. One of the reasons I knew he was good people was because I knew the people that he was going to for counsel were good people. When we were dating and I realized that I was, starting to fall in love with a brother, and vice versa, when it was clear that things were, we were talking about some long-term things. I told him that I wanted to interview his friends and I wanted him to interview my friends. Recognizing the importance of Wise Counsel, not only in my own decision making, right? I wanted my friend, I knew that I was feeling some kind of way and I was feeling warm inside and love was rising up. But my friends, they didn't know him, so they didn't know him yet. And so I wanted them to feel him out. And I said, no questions are off the table. And the same thing for his friends. His friends interviewed me. And not only was I interested in hearing the insight that my friends, had to share about, what they gathered, like learning from him. When I engaged with his friends, one, I wanted to get a sense of, if he was having a rough time with something, like who are the folks that he would be going to for advice? Are they of good character? Are they upstanding? Are they, our friends, our circle is a reflection of who we are. The other thing that I thought was incredibly, powerful, and you can find this when you assemble the right folks in community and in council, is that even though folks may have different perspectives and may have different vantage points, I'll use these folks who we interview, for instance, right, have known us for different points, met us at different times in life. Some we've known since we were like little children, some like we met later in life, but like they are people. And some we may have worked with or connected with professionally. But when there's consistency, right, when you see themes emerge, and this is one of the ways you can use Wise Counsel, when you can bring a diverse group of folks together, or even speak with them individually, but themes are emerging consistently, like across the board, with every person you speak to. And I'll give an example with this, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but I'm gonna give you your flowers, or some of your flowers now, Leland. Is that everyone spoke about how reliable he was. They weren't in conversation with each other, but like all these different people who knew him in different ways, different places, they spoke about how reliable he was. Or if I've been in counsel, around something professional that I was navigating, if I speak to different people and like this one has this political background or this one has this educational level, and there's all this diversity of experience, but some themes are coming up, like Elizabeth, I'm hearing you say, you need this, or I'm hearing, right? It's one of the benefits of counsel and how to activate and how to use counsel. And so again, if you're bringing folks together who are of right mind and right spirit, who have lived a little life and have some wisdom under their belt. And by one thing that I'll also add there is my son is part of my counsel too. He has a different kind of wisdom, right? There's an intergenerational transfer of knowledge and culture. Like that's one thing. But, you know, it like there are gifts and insights that he has that I don't have because I don't sit where he sits. And there's so many things that we can learn from young folks in that regard. You know, our ancestors believed that every time a child was born, that that was an ancestor who had returned. And it's our responsibility as grown folks or people who are in that village to create experiences and environments that help them remember that ancestral memory, that help them remember who they are, who they came to be, that help to activate those things. And so when we think about youth who are closer to having just got here, right? They have some insights and they also have some access points that we may not have. And so shout out to, happy to see the mom of one of my son's elementary school friends on the line. Anyway, saying all that to say, like, there's so many different ways that we can use and activate wise counsel. It's powerful when it's intergenerational as well.
Yeah, you made me think about a value that I hold. It is both a principle of mine, which is love, but it's one that is part of sort of discerning who, you know, who will I go to. First is like their love and regard for themselves, right? And then also folks who embody love in practice. And so when I think about a growth, learning and growth edges, for example, a lot of my work in racial co-liberation in the last few years has been about healing internalized supremacy, internalized racism, those dark shadow parts of yourself that seep up, you know, whether it's perfectionism or urgency or hyper productivity, right? And I have found that folks who in that context, folks that I can be completely vulnerable with, you know, and by that I mean I'm not pedestalized. Folks think they know me, right? Especially like Facebook makes everybody think. And I know I'm not, I don't know strangers. You know what I mean? I know no strangers. That's the kind of personality I have. But when it comes to like the tender parts, I need to be with folks who I trust, and the ways I get to trust is that I see you embodying these practices of love, of vulnerability, of courage, right? So that's, and I think that's changed for me over the years. I remember going into my 30s where I had to recalibrate my circle, if you will. And I had to get rid of those relationships where I was giving more than I was receiving, right? Or where it was a drain on, you know, I had to wear a mask to be in the relationship or show up a certain way or behave a certain way. Kija, there is something about getting close to 50 that I won't swear on centering justice, but you start giving no, you know what. As a recovering people pleaser, I'm like, come on, 50, is it coming? Like, I'm really, but I just wanted to, the reason I say that is because within that group, when I was younger, was also commiserate. You know, I remember being single. Yeah, men, you know, you're right. Men ain't no good. Well, that's not true. And that doesn't help me. That doesn't. So if you've got somebody that's operating from that's, and that is not embodied love. If we think any single group of people are no good, right? That is not the embodiment of love. So please jump in there. But I just wanted, like, kind of building on the what are the values and what is the vetting and how are you thinking about that? And Rod, I sent Lawrence, I recorded a little bit of what you said and sent it to him. And he said, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Thank you. So I wanted to add that piece about, as we're building our village, being mindful of commiserates. I wanted to be, you know, be clear on what are your core values, right? And looking for alignment there. And I think Elizabeth really touched on that. I also want to, like, what does it mean to be healing, y'all, in our wise in and among our council, if you will. Rod, you want to talk about healing at all, and maybe that's
Um, I'm an advocate for therapy.
mm,
I'm an advocate for going to sit on. There's a place in Ipsy. Um, so I coordinate ed programs for Grove Studios. So Grove Studios is by the tow truck places across the tracks, back by the old print company. I think it's like VG's Printing or whatever. But if you go back there, behind VG's Printing, there's a little small field, and there's an area right along the Huron River that nobody ever goes to, but it's like you're right on the water. Going, I go to that place because um, I have to slow down. My healing has been as a recovering principal, as I like to say. My healing has been in being able to slow down and do things for myself in a way that is cognizant, it is coherent, and it is not fleeting. Taking the time that is needed. So, just real quick, I lost my father. My mother came in. My mother was ill. She came and she lived with us. Afterwards, my mother soon started dialysis. My mother had a stroke in dialysis. My mother was being transported to dialysis Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every week for 3 hours while I was in class every Tuesday and Thursday night, transporting her to and from dialysis from Redford to Livonia and Livonia to Redford while going home in the middle or staying there and studying, while also having a directorship of a college program, EMU Upper Bound, while also trying to do some of these things that are coming that are bearing fruit now, like Formula 734, like the Amplify Fellowship. So there was literally no space for me to go sit on the river. And when my mother did pass away last year, and she passed away 2 days before my final PhD course, and it was as though my mother was my mother going through what she went through required me to sit my butt down and do what I needed to do and do what she told me I was going to do when I was a youth. Oh, you're gonna get your PhD one day. Oh, you're gonna, I'm just telling you that's what it's gonna be. Because I was a great reader when I was a kid, so on and so forth. And I watched this, like I told the group last time, I watched this machine kind of take my mom's life force out and give it back to her in what they consider to be a refined way. But ultimately, obviously, we all know that it can be relatively harmful. And I had to acknowledge the fact that, just as was spoken about earlier, her wisdom became clear through that process. It wasn't clouded by some of the constructs that we have around us. It was just flat out, what is the right thing to do? I love you. I believe in you. I don't care what the agenda is. It's what needs to be. So my healing has been getting back to that level and not worrying about the politics of a situation to do what is right. Not worrying about, not always worrying about the chess moves 2 and 3 steps ahead. Maybe it's something that we're gonna have to tackle when we get to it. So I've tried to simplify everything in my life. I gauge the simplicity of my life sometimes by what the inside of my car looks like. How much stuff how much stuff is in my car. Is it old projects and equipment in my car and this, that, that? And when it gets like that, I kind of stop and I say, "You're doing too much. You are doing too much." So, and what I found is, as I've went through that healing, there are people who have come to me for that same healing as well, to say, how do I make this situation more simple? And I think that with the manner in which we all operate in this room, we're all, people who have multiple modalities, but we have to simplify our wisdom. And when we simplify our wisdom and acknowledge the fact that we are all here and we are all here together, and the rules the rules don't change. We still have the capacity to have the wisdom of a third grader and make it through life. It's just experience changes things. If we can do those things, I think that we can really change society. So that's essentially what my healing has been about. It's been spiritual, it's been temporal, it's been mental and emotional, and it's an everyday thing because I can't love what I do. I can't love the people around me if I don't love myself in all the wrongs that I do first, and that's just what it comes down to for me.
I guess like when I think about, you said so much there. And one of the things that I got from that was every word you utter is a prayer. That just came to me. Everything we say, every word. So sometimes we're very intentional about I'm praying right now, but everything we say, every dream we have for our future, everything we do is a prayer. Every word we utter is a prayer, right? And so when I think about wise counsel and when I think about healing, I think about how I have to protect my space sometimes. So before my daughter headed out on this trail, I had people who were calling, oh, anything can happen. There can be wild animals out there. There could be this. And I had to protect, and I had to, protect my prayer because those are prayers, right? And they don't mean harm, but that's a prayer because every word we utter is a prayer for good or bad. It is just what we say. It's the affirmations that we put out into the world. And the universe doesn't know the difference between right, wrong, good, bad. You're just praying in every moment, right? And so as I heal, I laugh a lot because I think about the kind of conversations I would have with the younger me, because I am over 50 now and I don't have very many filters and I say whatever sometimes, right? But the kind of conversations and the talks that I would have with the younger me. And I think I'd said, I've been thinking a lot about my own marriage and how I've been married 7 times, people, 7 times to the same person, but he's really not the same person. The younger him and the younger me got together. And here we are 7 times. And so that's taken a lot of healing, right? It's taken a lot of healing for me because I'm different. I'm not the 20-something-year-old that was then, and neither is he, right? And so there's been a lot of healing over the years and conversations with myself. So sometimes I go back for wise counsel to that part of me. So, to where I was then, because perspective is such an amazing thing. And so as empty nesters, we've just had the opportunity to be different. Because when you're 20 something, you don't have kids, that's a whole part of your life. When you're in your 30s and 40s and you're raising kids, that's a whole nother part of your life. But now here you are in a quiet house, that's a whole nother part of your life. So he's in the basement right now and I'm up here. And I think about that. I think about how the healing that I've gotten from that relationship. Right now I'm in the it's really literally a hot girl summer, even in the winter. Okay. That means blankets on, blankets off, fans, manual fans, hot fans, then I'm cold, right? It's a hot girl summer for real. That's what you get at this stage of life, right? So that's changed our relationship because now he lives in a part of the house downstairs where he doesn't have to put up with my hormonal madness. And I get to live upstairs and he gets to visit. Oh, isn't that something? That's kind of, yeah. But I love the fact that all of that is healing. All of that is change. All of that is being able to look back over our lives. Like there's an old hymn, gospel song says, when I look back over my life and I think things over, I can truly say that I've been blessed. I've got a testimony, right? And so the testimony is that we get to be our own wise counsel sometimes. If, as Rod said, we take the space, for me, there's a concept that I have. I feel like just because we've been in this space for 400 years doesn't make it home. It doesn't make this place home. So I make it a point before the pandemic to go home, to go to St. Vincent, to be at home, to land, to walk the places where my mother walked, to walk the places where my father walked, to be in the places where my grandmother was, because I need that connection. I know there's a place on the beach on Villa Beach where I go and I look, there's a small rock with a cross on it, and I go there. And I've also told my kids, if something happens to me, cremate me, take me there, because that's where I connect, right? Those things are healing. Those things are counsel for me, and they feel good at this stage. I don't have the kind of regrets. Like I don't live in the world of regret. I live in the world, like Rod said, of learning and growing and reflection, you know, because it's the journey.
There's so much you invited us to. Can I say back what I feel like I heard? Because there were some nuggets there. So I heard you inviting us to return to younger versions of ourselves as part of our wise counsel. I heard you inviting us to extend grace and not regret, like to be in this season and present for what it has to offer. I heard you, Rod, inviting us to be in, both of you, inviting us to not just our own work of healing, but in being in spaces where healing is happening. And Elizabeth, and then Rod, I know we just have you for a little bit more as you prepare for class, but like, I want to just transition, Hamida and I want to transition to like, what are those invitations that you extend to those who joined us today as they start thinking about that work of healing and developing or building on their wise counsel? And maybe for the sake of time, I'll go Rod, and then Elizabeth, would you pick up on that? Thank you.
I would invite those of you who are with us to really, and it sounds cliche, but to really give yourself grace. And not just grace based on the external factors that have went. We do not know everything that we need to know. And as hard as we work, and I hesitate to even call it a facade of community, as hard as we work or claim to work for people, we still work relatively in silos. We are still extremely solely connected to the strategic goals of organizations or the strategic goals of departments. And while collaboration and connectivity is everything that we need right now, individually and as a community. So I would invite you to really take a very vulnerable look at yourself, and look at, my mama used to tell me, if you run with 9 broke friends, you will be the 10th. And look around, take a minute and kind of ascertain your counsel as it is. What are you, and not only your counsel that is physically there with you or you talk to on the phone, but what information are you gathering and listening to and absorbing, and consider how it's impacting you and affecting you. I have been watching videos on YouTube. I am a YouTube premium person, so YouTube is like the entertainment god in my house, and just the acknowledgement that there are ideas. It's almost, I guess, the pattern that we go through is similar to YouTube, where you watch one video, you're gonna find another video that's gonna speak to you that same truth. It's like an algorithm that we go through. And I think we do the same thing in our minds. We create some kind of idea in our mind, and you'll find proof that that idea is true. So having those counsels, having those conversations with people who are around you with diverse perspectives is extremely, extremely important. So my invitation is to provide yourself with the platform and the ability to back up and say, what value do these things have in my spirit? And what does my spirit need in order to get to the next page? I am completely convinced that my next step is going to happen by the hook or by the crook. because at the end of the day, in looking back, I have transcended so much, and we all have transcended so much, that we have to be of the belief that what is for us next is for us. And we will get to that space, but you don't have to do it by yourself. And that's what your counsel is for. That's what I would say.
Right on. Um, Two things come to mind for me. Um, the first thing I'll share is be open to new understandings of your big questions. One of the most powerful things that councils can do for us is to clarify our big questions and to help us come up with new questions. What questions do you say? The questions that are helping you figure out what your assignment is. And what I mean by your assignment, I mean your purpose on earth. So be open to new understandings of your big questions, and get you some folks in your circle who can help you understand your assignment.
Rod, thank you so much for being with us. We know you got to duck a little bit early. Appreciate you blessing us today. And
Thank you.
Kija, I heard you come off of mute. Oh, go ahead, Rod.
I just want to say thank you for having me. And I'm just so appreciative of all the positive comments and feedback that I've received, that we all have received. And it's been, it's been a joy to be amongst you in this conversation. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kija, my love.
I mean, I guess the invitation would be to remember that you are already, you came here already knowing. We be knowing. We be knowing, so and it is all these systems that pick and pick and pick and pick and pick away at us, right? And so our job is to preserve the parts of ourselves that we know are our truths. I know who I am. I know, I don't have to change. I guess I get that more now at this stage of my life. I don't have to change to be, to show up in a room. I get to show up as I am, and I get to be my true self all the time. I don't have to offer apologies for that. And, my hope is always that, as an educator and as a parent, that we encourage kids to understand that, and we encourage ourselves to understand that. We spend a lot of time, I know for I've been fired from every single job I've ever had because it was sort of a square peg in a round hole, right? Then I realized, recently, oh, I'm not meant to do that. I'm meant to be in the world the way that I am. And just because the world doesn't, I don't fit in this sort of capitalistic way, there's a space for me. And when I'm being authentic, and when I'm being honest, and when I'm being true, and when I'm being me, the universe steps up to support that. And it is validating and amazing. And so I invite you to do that. I invite you to, to fall in love with yourself again, and to remember that, the greatness that is you, and the fact is that we can't have community without you. Like, the community that you're in can't even be a community. It can't be complete if you're not in it. So there are some things I realize now. I say to people all the time, like, I'm so thankful to be spending space and time on this plane right now in this realm, because there's no accident that we're all here right now. And so I'm always grateful for that. And so I invite you to remember that. I invite you to remember the core of who you are.
Kija, Elizabeth, thank you so much. I'm just sitting in the moment of thank you for putting that in the chat, Yodit. I was gonna utter that again. Remember the core of who you are. Thank you so much for joining us to think about how we build our councils. A few things that are sticking in my mind throughout, and I started taking notes because I just needed to hold on to some of this goodness. Individualism is the death knell of community and the power of being in community. Your words are your prayers, and with your words, you speak into being life. And you came here already knowing and falling in love with you. Fall or re-fall in love with you. I also want to name that one of our participants shared a question that we didn't get a chance for, but we will follow up in email because we hear you and we want to continue with that. With that, wow, I think I'm still just processing this session. With that, I want to offer that kind of our past centering justice sessions and this one and hopefully our future, we've taken into consideration your thoughts, feedback that's come up for you, ideas for where we go. And we heard that our community wanted like deep personal stories. And so we are fortunate enough that we've gotten to a place where we're able to draw upon. And I'm just so struck, Elizabeth and Kija, you talked about adding how you went about adding folks to your beloved circle, right? A life partner, and leaning on your counsels. And so we ask that you share your thoughts and feedback on a survey that I think, yes, Carly, always on it, girl. Okay. To let you know how you experienced this session, what are some hopes you might have for the next time we convene for us to talk and connect at our next Centering Justice. We wanted to make sure that we gave you that space so we could co-create in that way. After having said that, I want to pause to see if there's anything else that Dee or Elizabeth or Kija would like to offer.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me. I want to thank everyone who's joined today. A special shout out to my family, a special shout out to my mother who's on the line. Thank you, Mama. And just wishing everyone love and blessings.
I also want to just give thanks, imposter syndrome would have you saying, for me at least, being like, why am I on this panel? What do I got to say that's of importance? But then I squashed that. I yelled, cancel, because we're all here for this purpose today, to learn and grow and to be better. And so I'm so grateful to have been given the opportunity to share space with all of you today. My life is made richer because of it. So thank you.
Well, I can say, as I said at the top, I have and want to thank you publicly, personally, and professionally benefited from the two of you. Elizabeth, the amount of time that you poured into the vision I have, I will never forget that. But then also this past weekend, when I tore up my baby's hair, trying to cut his hair before his piano recital, it was Elizabeth who called with a loving reminder that this too shall pass, and it did. And Kija, just whether it's, a Sunday porch conversation or the trust of letting me build a relationship with Zoena, the thing that I want our participants to know is that when we open ourselves beyond the individualism you spoke of, Kija, but also the tendency to suffer in silence, which comes along with that individualism. When we open ourselves and allow folks to help groom us. And I'll say Hamida's been on our team. I've known Hamida a few years. She's been on our team for a year, and just adds a depthfulness to the work that is so evident to me. We couldn't be where we are if she had not agreed to join the team, right? So when we're building, and I've learned in leadership how important it is to share and seed power so that you can make room for wise counsels to bloom. out of the places that you might not anticipate. And that has certainly been the case, not just with Hamida, but so many people. I see Will here and Linda here, so many people on our team who organizationally, work, under me in terms of org chart, but who I'm so clear we would not be able to do this work if they didn't say yes and show up to this place every day. So let's keep that. I know there are many leaders on this call, and let's remember that the wise counsel we need is across the Zoom from us, or across the hallway, or in the office down the street. And certainly, and this is a final note, when it comes to healing, I used to say kind of tongue in cheek that we can't heal what we name. And when I was doing way more kind of racial equity and justice work, I would say this conversation could go so much farther if we could begin with, hello, my name is Yodit and I hold racist ideology. It's the part of like trying to convince folks that that's a thing that we belabor. So as we're thinking about healing and co-liberation, let's just acknowledge that we have all been bathed in the sickness and the toxicity of these systems, and that it is the water that we need to heal, right? We keep treating the fish. It's the water we need to heal, and that healing has to happen collectively. And each of us, just like raising these babies up, they all belong to all of us. Healing the pathway for our next generations and for our future and our past all belongs to us. So thank you for your wisdoms today. Thank you for the ways you poured into us.